In the chamber this week, welcome to Season 1. We talk about the history and legend of one of our favorite rogues. We discuss one of the most popular genres of contemporary AAA gaming. We talk tone and how to build a huge world. And Joe talks about taking cues from fantasy while discussing one of his favorite fantasy novels. Also, fans of good audio rejoice. Joe's working with a fancy new audio rig. Listen to the wackiness in the crispest audio possible. All this and more on Fandom Roulette. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
Oh man, Cody, like you don't understand what's like in front of me right now.
Yeah, you got the whole thing set up.
I got like a crane and like a fancy microphone and like one of those things that makes all my P's sound like I'm not like. So yeah, nice. I don't even know if that one's gonna come through because of all of the fancy, what's even that word? It starts with a P.
Plosives,
yeah, yeah. Which is, it's funny that they made that poor word start with the sound that makes a plosive. So like, I guess it's almost onomatopoeic if you think about it. If like you squint your ears a little bit. So Cody, what nerdy stuff have you been up to, my man?
Well, with the week, or kind of the week off, I wouldn't really necessarily call it a week off. I have been prepping for this season's video games.
Whoa.
We finally got to play the 6 campaign.
Yeah, that was fun.
And
I think we mentioned that in the mini-sode, but it was great.
Right. For those of you who missed the mini-sode, welcome to season 1.
Yeah.
And then
everything up before this was season 0.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it at season 0.
Shoulder shrugs. I don't know. I mean, we'll roll with it. But I've also gotten back into the World of Warcraft. So, yeah, I promised I wouldn't do it to myself, but it got. What you playing? Are you a horde or an alliance? Right, those are the things, right?
Yeah, those are the two. And
yes, I got it.
I play horde, and right now I'm swapping back. So my wife plays, so that was one of the big reasons why I got back into it. Is like I know that I have someone to play with. Aww, whereas before it was very much like people kept falling in and out of the game, so like I was just kind of playing by myself. Kind of gets boring a little, being too alone. But right now I'm swapping between a paladin and a shadow priest in my.
Ooh, spooky!
Yeah, it's super fun. But enough about me. What nerdy stuff have you been up to?
Well, Cody, going back to high school, I started playing RuneScape again.
Oh man. I don't think I know a real person who plays RuneScape before. That's amazing. You have to tell me about it.
Oh yeah, I played RuneScape. Dude, my friends and I would hang out on Saturdays to play RuneScape. It was great.
Yes.
I'm gonna whet your appetite with like a brief story.
Yes.
Which is my friend's dad like created a character literally just to troll people. And,
classic.
So he was level 1 and running around and calling people noobs.
Oh man, and then, classic.
Tried to sell like basic shorts and like hammers as like mithril underwear and adamantium smackers.
Okay.
And I think he actually did scam a guy once and like got money for it. But
damn.
Yeah, right. But anyway, in real actual things, so let's see. On Saturday, I got to hang out with some of my friends from college, and we played Sentinels of the Multiverse. Which, have you ever played that game?
It sounds cool. Is that the Marvel kind of card game? Or am I not thinking of the right thing?
It is a superhero card game, except I think one of the things that's like really cool about it is that the creative team developed superhero, like original superheroes and original villains, and then like on all the cards, like they have like quotes from the fake comic universe that they created, and like the issue number that it comes from, and like it has its own like internal mythology and things like that. which is really fun. And the other nice thing about it is, as opposed to a lot of, and I think this is actually might be becoming a trend with deck builders in general, is that it's like, when you buy the kit, like, if the whole deck is in there, it's not like you have to, like, go and buy, like, bazillion Sentinels of the Multiverse packs to, like, get the one good, like, Batman stand-in card.
Right.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We played a little bit of, oh man, Cody, have you heard about this crazy game? It's called Kingdom Hearts. And it's like, when you walk away, you won't hear me say, that was a season 0 joke, so I'm just gonna leave that in the dust. My sister started playing it with my friends, and we were just kind of hanging out and having fun, and then that was a lot of fun. And I've been reading
enjoying the inevitable betrayal of Donald Duck.
Yeah, I didn't mention anything. Also, boy howdy, Donald's like the worst in that game, huh?
Man, I was trying to get through it on like easy mode, so like I was hoping that I wouldn't need him, but sometimes it would have been nice if he would have just thrown out a heal when I asked, but
yeah, well,
womp womp.
You can't always get what you want. Sometimes your cleric becomes a trickster cleric because your sorceress is twin spelling healing word. So anyway, you know that old saying. I think Plato said that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
that quote I just said. that was a Plato original.
Yes, I mean you are our history guy. I'm gonna put all my faith in you.
Thank you, Cody. So anyways, as you can probably tell by this point, Fandom Roulette is a podcast where we discuss a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, role-playing games, and other nerdy things that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
As the spirit moves us. And so we're trying out a new thing, which is we are coming up with thematic seasons as opposed to us trying to like figure out week by week what we were interested in. It gives us a little bit of time to prep ahead of time, and to kind of come up with interesting little themes that we might explore again from time to time. But season 0, I will just give the overview of the history section, and then when we get to the other sections, we'll give the overview of those. Does that sound good, Cody?
Sure.
All right. So I decided to start off with some fun stuff for the history section, which is rogues.
Yeah.
Which, like, when you search for them, sometimes there's up a lot of interesting results, because I think people's definitions of rogues vary from media to media. But, digression aside, I'm going to start off by doing a teeny little bit of mea culpa to start off the history section.
Bless you.
Nothing like... Thank you. That was a tough one. I forgot to take my ye old
Allegra D.
Allegra D this morning, which actually, funny that you should mention that. I was sneezing like all day at work because I was right next to a patch of ragweed. I'm very allergic to ragweed. So people would walk in and I'd be like trying to tell them about brooms, and I'd be like, so anyway, it's broom corn. I'll keep that in. Yeah. Who even knows what showed up with that because of all of these filters.
Ooh.
Those coughs like probably just like disappear in the ether, and people are like, what is Joe even talking about?
Yeah,
but anyways,
there's just gonna be like the cold emptiness of space where your cough was now.
I was taking a very, I think, dumb and rigid view of history. Which is something that I've never been an advocate for.
Okay.
Weirdly enough. Which is, it's like, I can't talk about that thing. That thing is fiction. And it's like, but the more you think about it, it's like, I'm also a huge advocate of, fiction and media being able to sort of give us insight into other aspects of history that we might not necessarily get by reading letters and facts and figures and things like that. So going forward, I'm going to try to bring in some of that aspects as well as, like the straight facts,
Ooh.
Which is an extended setup for, this person that we are going to be talking about this week may or may not have actually existed, but their legacy certainly existed and has kind of, it still impacts us to this day, actually. We're going to be talking a little bit about
Han Solo.
Yep. So anyway, in 1970, George Lucas releases this little film called Star Wars, and dun, 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 and then there's like this whole title crawl. No, we're talking about Robin Hood.
Damn it! I was so close.
Not at all. Robin Hood is, like I said, probably one of our most popular mythological historic figures. I would say that. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, he was a fox. Like, he was a really dope fox guy in a movie I saw once.
He was a really dope fox guy. He was a really American Kevin Costner once.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was a really Australian Russell Crowe once.
There's like a whole board game about lying that's like based off that concept.
Sure, he was an Errol Flynn once.
Yeah.
There's a new movie coming out that may or may not be set in the post-apocalypse. No one's quite sure, but it looks very bad.
Oof.
Have you seen this?
No.
It's called, I think it's called The Hood.
Oh no.
And it's like, hey, you know that Arrow TV show that did really well on the CW? What if we did that, but a movie? And then, like, there's, like, lines here or there where it's like, maybe it's in, like, a post-apocalyptic future, or maybe it's set in, like, you know, like, Crusader England. No one's quite sure, except it just kind of looks surreal.
Huh.
Yeah, right? I don't know how I feel about it. But anyway, weird discretion aside, because that's never something... That's happened.
That is a Fandom Roulette promise.
It's honestly, it's kind of weird. That was like our most on-topic tangent we've ever had. Because like we were very on tangent or like on topic because we were talking about different iterations of Robin Hood. Also, if you think about it, Green Arrow is in a way an iteration of Robin Hood. He had that little like Errol Flynn goatee, and like depending on who's the writer, he has like the like Robin Hood like little cap thing that's like super popular, even though it's not a hood. But anyway, Robin Hood is a legendary historic outlaw that was originally depicted in English folklore and has shown up quite a lot in literature and film. And so according to legends, he was a highly skilled archer, but he was also a highly skilled swordsman. And then this is where things start kind of falling apart about the historicity of Mr. Hood.
I like it.
Mr. the Hood, which is, what a guy. Oh, he showed up in Shrek. He did show up in Shrek. Yeah, remember that sequence where he was French for some reason?
Oh, yeah, and he tried to fight Shrek, and then Shrek, like, farted on him or something. Cause, like,
no, Princess Fiona came in, and then she
farted on him.
No, because she did, like, the Matrix thing where she, like, stayed still in the air.
Oh, yeah.
And then she was, like, and she, like, blew the bangs out of her hair because, like, hey, guys, do you remember the Matrix? But here's the thing. I actually kind of like Shrek. Like, don't at me, but, like, I kind of like Shrek still.
I mean, anyway. Like, it did really well for a reason, I think.
It's true. Also, Cody, did you know that somebody...
No! No.
Look at that spike.
But anyway, I spiked real hard.
It's weird because depending on the stories, like Robin has had different origins over time. He served different monarchs over time. There are characters that are prominently featured in some stories and then just like completely disappear in other stories.
I also hear that he was friends with a bat who was also a man at one point. That was kind of a weird tangent.
Wait, is there like a Batman Robin Hood team up that I'm not aware of?
Oh, no, I was totally kidding. I was just using the name Robin.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was... So anyway.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No. It was funny. I liked it. So like, apparently one of the very first stories that we have of Robin Hood dates from the second half of the 15th century. So in these stories, like, apparently he had outlandish skill as an archer. He was not fond of the clerics, and he really didn't like this dude named the Sheriff of Nottingham.
That's the game.
And in
No, that's the title of the game I was talking about earlier.
I know. I want to play it. It sounds like fun. I'd be really good at it.
It was super fun.
And Joel would be very bad at it, so...
Yes.
All the more reason for me to want to play it. But anyway, and then there are other characters, so like Little John shows up, and Will Scarlet shows up, but a character who I've never fucking heard of, named Mulch the Miller's son, was there.
Who is that?
I don't know, but apparently he's a character in the Robin Hood mythos.
Huh.
He only appears in a couple of the oldest ones. So a jest spelled Gest of Robin Hood spelled Robynhode, and then Robin Hood and the Monk, which is like the one where we kind of start seeing like the most contemporary things. So like this is when I think we start seeing Maid Marian and Friar Tuck show up, because they were not in earlier versions of the story. And this is when he really establishes that he was a believer in the true king. So he's not only fighting against Little John for being, like a taxes man, he's also fighting against Little John for being, like a pretender to the actual throne.
Oh, and so, snap.
As we go through, we start seeing, like I said, we start seeing certain aspects jump in. Sometimes things will go away. So, for instance, the monk nor the potter, who are earlier characters, do not appear in Robin Hood and Guy of Gisborne, which is probably at least as old as those two, but like doesn't pop up anywhere else. So this is when people are like, okay, so Robin Hood probably isn't like a real guy, right? Because there's other aspects too, like Richard the Lionhearted probably have actually been the king, when in earlier stories he's true to the King Edward, but he's still fighting Prince John. So like there are things that just kind of like contradict one another as we go through. But I think that the thing that it really remains true through all these stories is almost always he is teaming up with poor people to fight rich people to sort of bring back their land, and he's almost always a good fighter, and he almost always has a band of people that he usually refers to as his merry men. Now, here we go, because we're going to jump ahead a little bit, or not ahead, but we're going to talk about some potential people who he might have been. Okay, you ready?
Okay, yeah.
So, the historicity of Robin Hood has been debated for centuries, mainly because Robert, which could be shortened to Robin, was a very common medieval name, and the surname Hood was also very common because it either referred to a hooder, who is a maker of hoods, or to someone who wore a hood as a head covering. So, who knows? There could have been a lot of dudes out there who were known as Robin Hood because, hey, look, it's my friend Robin who makes the hoods.
Okay. I see what you're putting down.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's like it's like having the last name Smith. Like, right. It means that at some point in some town, your family was probably like a blacksmith or something,
The tall tale of Peter Smith.
Right.
It's the next one. It's the next big one.
Yep. But there are some theories out there who this might be. So there was a guy named Robin Hood of York, who he was found in the York Asses. Assizes. And he was confiscated and he became an outlaw. He had 32 shillings and sixpence confiscated. And then within a year, he was an outlaw that was fighting against people in the woods, but we don't know. We don't know if he was a bandit. Then there was Robert and John Deville, who, during the Second Barons' War, they led some factions against some normal people. Roger Godbeard, who was a diehard name. Right? I guess Godbird instead. There's no A, but he was a diehard supporter of Simone de Montfort, and so it's possible that this guy was the prototype Robin Hood, especially because there's no evidence though that he was actually Robin Hood, but there are people who think he might have been. And then this is my personal favorite, which is Robin Hood as an alias. It has long been suggested by some historians that Robin Hood was just kind of a stock alias used by thieves, dating from 1262 rather. So who took the served name Robhod, and this was something that they could have just applied to outlaws. So there's lots of theories about who a potential Robin Hood could have been. I've heard theories too that it could have just been like these stories are just like kind of amalgamating like a bunch of different historic figures and just kind of like putting them all together. So it's like, ooh, I heard a kind of interesting story about this guy over here and then this guy over here. And then they just kind of like, well, what should we call this guy? It's like Robin Hood's a good name. And they start calling him Robin Hood. But I think like my point is more so, this is one of those examples where I think the story kind of outshines the fact, like, I don't think it really matters if there's an actual Robin Hood out there in the world or not. I think it's just more
get down with that.
Yeah, I think it's just more like the story has really kind of taken over and become the more important aspect.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of a personal connection to me because as a child, Robin Hood was my favorite movie growing up.
Hell yeah.
That's why I wanted to start off with this one. I think that he is a very famous rogue, kind of a prototype rogue for a lot of the rogues that appear in our fantasy and our fiction. But yeah, any questions for me?
Questions? Gosh, I was thinking about this, and I just love the idea that I almost want to do a role-playing game campaign where you're a thieves guild and like that's the name of the guild is Robin Hood. And when people are, like if people get caught, I'm Robin Hood, and that's like the story. I also remember there's an episode from, I believe it was the most recent season of Doctor Who where they explore Robin Hood a little bit.
Interesting.
And the Doctor is convinced that it's a story that was made by authority to basically quell the potential uprising of the people who were getting, basically taxed to death. And like that was like, it was just this like made up like, oh well, Robin Hood will save us, and it's kind of like leaning onto this hope. But it also kind of played out that, spoilers for Doctor Who, I guess, that basically the townsfolk, not the townsfolk, but the nobility were aliens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, typical Doctor Who stuff.
Sure.
But not really questions. I just love this. I love the concept, and I agree. I think my favorite like iteration of Robin Hood is maybe the idea that it's a moniker for thieves, and that's how they got around.
Honestly, I think that in a way that's the one that makes the most sense to me. And it could even not necessarily even be like that there were popular Robin Hood stories, but it was just like it's a pretty basic name, right?
Right. And back in the day, you didn't have like identification and shit like that, so it was it was super easy to just be like, nah, man, I'm Peter Smith. You will never catch me.
I mean, not to spoiler like future episodes, but like there was a time in like American history where like a bank robber could announce their name and as they were leaving, and like the cops just couldn't get to them fast enough, so like they were telling people who they were and then getting out of there, Like,
yeah.
a little bit different. Like this one is a person trying to hide their identity, but it's like it's like saying, oh, what's your name? And saying like, oh, my name is like John Smith, right? Like there are hundreds of John Smiths out there in the world.
Right.
So like good luck trying to actually track me down to see if I'm legit or not,
Yep.
So,
yep.
All right.
Very
so yeah,
cool.
that's Rogue Week 1. Next week, we're going to be going a little bit eastbound, and we're going to be talking about other historic rogues from around the world. So anyway,
Nice.
Hey, Cody.
Yeah.
You know who's really upset about the announcements that there were seasons? Terry left. There's
What?
no more Terry.
Why did he leave?
Because he was like, you're never going to remember my voice over multiple seasons. Whoa.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Who is our new guest there?
Our new guest was my phone.
Keeping it in triplet.
Oh man, I'm not gonna get rid of it.
Was it Cortana?
No, it was it's my text message ringtone.
Which I thought that was just like the snake thing.
Well, I changed it to a more modern snake thing.
What?
I know, right?
No. Colonel.
I mean, it's still from Metal Gear Solid, but
sheesh, that was like a pitch perfect solid snake, Joe.
I thought
that
David Hayter was in the room with us.
Just like walked into the room and just like beat me up and stole the mic right out of my mic stand.
Colonel.
That was Snake struggling to use the restroom in his older age.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
A little bit of ASMR for you. Hey there.
Ooh.
This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
Oh man. Okay. So anyways. Hey, but yeah, no, so Terry like left.
Oh, okay. I mean,
but hey guys, it's me, Terry Jr.
Oh no.
Yeah, this is my voice, and Joe will probably not forget this one because it's basically his voice, but nasalier.
I have a feeling you're still gonna forget it.
I mean, there's a good chance.
So Terry Jr., tell me, what's stuck in your nasal passages that is...
Well, really... Cody, I was at the playground recently.
Oh.
And I was building...
a young one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, hey, no judgment, man. And I was here I am trying to set up a good segue for you, but then you insulted my age. So I was going down the slide.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then I looked over and I saw these little kids playing in a sandbox, and I was like, that would have made a good segue for the podcast, but I'm not playing in it anymore.
Oh, man, you're not going to play in the sandbox?
But you know what I do have in my nose, Cody?
Yeah, sand?
AAA games.
Oh, boy.
So anyways, bye, Terry Jr. Bye, Joe. He left. Step.
Oh, man.
Close.
All right, guys. This is the awkward... the first of many awkward transitions into another segment of the episode.
I bet that's not true. Everyone loves our awkward transitions.
Oh, I think they do too. But this is my section. I talk about video games because I play more video games than I care to admit to other human beings that I see in person.
Okay, so you just admitted to like the world on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
That makes sense.
So,
no, that adds up.
Yeah, and
so anyway, carry on.
This season, my vague topic is open world / sandbox games.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about it.
Man, if only you didn't insult Terry Jr.'s age and you could have talked about sandboxes.
I know, right? I'm the worst.
I'm just kidding, Cody.
So I was originally, and I guess this is a little behind the curtains, I was going to talk about Skyrim today, but yeah. However, I realized that this game is 7 years old.
I was so close.
It came out November 11th, 2011. I was still in college.
Never forget.
When this game came out. Never forget. It was funny. It was the week of finals for me.
Oh, God. That's probably good. Ooh, when you're done, I'm going to tell my Skyrim story.
Yeah.
Okay.
So originally I was going to go in like really in depth with Skyrim and talk about that, but I feel like the game is so like it's 7 years old. If you haven't played it, I don't know what rock you've been under, but you should give it a shot. It's usually on sale during the holiday seasons for less than like $1.
Probably hanging out with mud crabs, am I right?
Oh, if I could elbow you, I could. I'd be like, oh,
because they're under a rock, like mud crabs do it. Under rocks. Under rocks.
I understand. However,
here's the joke, friends. Is it the... I'm just kidding.
Oh my god.
Carry on.
No, not the new bit where you explain jokes and make them bad when they're already bad.
So anyway, to explain Cody's joke right there.
No.
But anyways.
So...
Oh, wait. Can I tell my quick Skyrim story?
Yes, tell me your quick Skyrim story.
Okay, so it came out our senior year, right?
I think so.
Wait,
well,
because
senior year of what?
I graduated college in 2012, so yeah, that would make sense, right?
I think I graduated in 2013. I have a weird college schedule. I did not do the usual 4 years thing.
I was over the age of 21 when that video game came out.
Okay.
And my friend who had it was not yet 21.
Okay.
And so he tasked me with a task, which was I went and I bought 2 full bottles of mead.
Okay.
And then we chilled them, and then we both had drinking vessels that were big enough to contain 1 full bottle of mead.
Oh dear God.
So we both drank a full bottle of mead apiece while playing Skyrim.
And
well, he woke up the next day and deleted his first character because he had no idea what the hell was going on because he was very drunk. I also got pretty drunk. Also, the meat started warming up, and let me tell you, there is nothing worse in this world than warm mead.
Oh, I don't think I've ever had warm mead.
Have you ever had cold mead?
Maybe? I don't know.
Do you know what mead is?
I mean, I know of it. I don't know what it contains, and I think I've had some in my past, but I don't know what it actually is.
It's honey wine.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I have definitely had it in the past, but
it's good. I feel like I like it more from like my nerd reputation than anything else.
Sure.
But anyway, so yeah, we drank a lot of mead when Skyrim first came out. But anyways, hey Cody, if you were to like put Skyrim into like a genre,
I would probably call it a sandbox role playing game.
What?
I know, right?
So wait, you can build sandcastles in it?
No, unfortunately. Well,
like local feral cats?
I don't know. Maybe there's a mod for it on the PC.
Like local feral cats like pee and poo in it?
No. Ew. Oh God. Why?
Like
I mean, you're not wrong, but
it's like a box of like sand inside of it.
Yeah. No. Open world sandbox games are these big open environment games, which usually lean on the idea of flexibility to approach said game, whether that's mechanically or in terms of story. Most of the time when you hear open world game, and like, let's just say you're not familiar with the concept, typically, if a company uses, it's an open world adventure game, like, typically this means you're going to get a big open area that you can explore, and in some fashion, the game is pretty flexible about how you tackle the game, whether you blow straight through the story and do nothing else, or maybe you go and check out that mountain over there and whatnot.
It's a pretty cool mountain.
Yeah, I mean, some games have... See, and this is kind of... I feel like it can be a little nebulous sometimes, because some games don't necessarily follow the flexibility module. They kind of... It's a very rigid game, but like just a big open space.
Ooh, rigid game.
Yeah, which is weird because I feel like the concept of open world kind of defeats that purpose. So there are varying bits, and some people or some game companies have played with the concept of an open world game and what that means.
Okay.
But 9 times out of 10, if I'm talking about an open world game, or you hear somebody like, this is an open world game, it is a very fucking huge game filled to the brim with stuff to do. I've broken it down to its base. Most of the time, there's some flexibility, although I argue that sometimes that's not the case.
Okay.
But Skyrim was kind of my definitive, like, it was probably the first, for a really long time, up until very recently, it defined what I wanted in an open world game. It's the reason I love The Witcher 3 so much. Witcher 3, while it has a linear main story, there's a lot of different side quests and things, and they all play differently, and depending on how you approach each side quest or mission, it changes the world around you and changes how that story, whether it's the main one or the side one, ends ultimately. Witcher 3 is a great game if you haven't played it.
I've heard it's a great game.
Yeah, and it is like open world barely begins to describe how massive this game is. There's so much, and they have so much good DLC. I think there's 2 DLCs. I put like almost 100 hours into Witcher 3, and I haven't touched the DLC.
Yikes, that's a lot of hours.
Right. And to go back to a little unknown, I guess it's now a known fact about me. I have a hard time playing through a whole game unless it keeps me hooked the whole way. And it's hard to keep it's hard to keep me hooked.
Sure.
I have put around 600 plus hours in Skyrim.
I lied. It's closer to 400.
If that gives you an idea of how much I loved that game. And for a really long time, it defined what it meant for me. And let's face it, there's a reason why Elder Scrolls Skyrim came out on every console and every iteration for the past 7 years. It's a hit, and I'm super pumped about whenever Bethesda gets around to doing the next one.
Yeah. Aren't they working on one right now?
Yeah,
well,
I mean, they teased... Yeah, they're working on Fallout right now, and then they're working on a new IP that's going to be sci-fi.
Whoa.
Which has me intrigued.
Is it called Skyrim
but then after
Space?
that... I hope. But then after that, they're working on the next Elder Scrolls game. But yeah, I mean... Cool. Open world games, like, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the new. There's actually quite a few games that are coming out soon that have open world as like one of its themes, so I'm definitely going to dive into that. And not to drag this on too long, because I'm just kind of, it's kind of like a little teaser of what's to come, and and I didn't want to sit here and have people be like, I know, Skyrim's a good game.
It is. Yes, it is a good game.
Yeah, it is a good game.
It's a very good game.
So I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
What was your first open world game, and what was your favorite?
What was my first open world game?
Yeah, like the first game that made you feel like, wow, this is a big place and there's so much shit to do. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be like the first one, but I think the one that like was like, oh, I get what open world means.
I mean, my friends and I played a buttload of Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Oh, hell yeah.
And like the cool thing about that game was like you really felt like you were going around a city. Yeah. Like you would be driving and you'd suddenly be in like a new like, borough or a new section of the town, and like I think the other cool thing too is like the cars would like change as you got into like nicer or like sketchier areas. Like that was a lot of fun. Like my friends and I played a lot of Grand Theft Auto in high school.
Yeah.
Which are like brilliant parody games. Don't at me. I think maybe my favorite open world game is probably Skyrim, I would think.
Okay. Very cool.
I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think I've said this before on the show. I think it's the closest I've ever felt to like playing a tabletop RPG like in a video game.
Yeah.
There's now still, I mean, where that comparison kind of falls apart is the fact that it's like, you can't physically break a video game. I mean, you can physically break a video game, but like everything that you do is still to a certain degree programmed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like it's the first time where it's like, you can go on ridiculous side quests, and you can have like crazy titles where like you could be like the head of like the Champions Guild and also the heads of a Thieves Guild, which is like such a D&D thing to me.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
it's like, hey, heroes, could you like please come and like take over or like help me like take out the Thieves Guild? It's like, the Thieves Guild that I'm the president of? No. It's like, but yeah, I think Skyrim's probably my number. What about you? What are your answers to that?
Well, I think my first, like, wow, this is pretty big was Grand Theft Auto 3.
Alright.
Yeah, about that same time. I think those first 3D Grand Theft Auto games were really, like, such a big hit. Like, it just felt so crazy to me, like, how big those places were, and, like, how, even though, like, to today's standards, it might not feel so, like, filled to the brim with things. When that was first out, it felt so, like, it was so weird that, like, whoa, everywhere I drive, there's people and cars and all this crazy stuff, and there's these missions that you can do that take you from one place to another.
Sure.
And, like, it just felt so open. And then my favorite, see, this one's tough. I mean, I put a ton of time. Go on.
Those games, like, more or less had, like, organic load time, too, which was kind of a revolutionary thing.
That was very cool. See, I want to say Skyrim. I would say Skyrim holds a dear place in my heart.
Sure.
It really defined the way I look at open world games.
Right.
However, Breath of the Wild is up there.
Oh, see, I haven't played that, so. Gotcha,
that makes sense. Yeah, I think Breath of the Wild has redefined certain elements that I feel like in some places Skyrim almost doesn't quite add up and it meets this, like, that same threshold that Zelda did.
Sure.
In my head. But yeah, I still think Skyrim still holds it. I mean, I've put, like I said, 600 plus hours. I don't know how many characters I've made in Skyrim and just played it over and over again. I think my favorite moment was I got to the end of the game and, like, you can say one thing to the big bad guy before you fight. And literally it's like, originally it's supposed to be like, yeah, I'm the head of the Thieves Guild, or, oh, I did this, or I did this. And I had completed everything in the game with that character, like all the, like, major quest lines. So it was like, I'm the head of the Warriors Guild, I'm the head of the Assassins Guild, the Thieves Guild, like, all. And it was so funny to scroll down the list and be like, I literally did everything, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
in the weeks to come, we're gonna talk about all kinds of sandboxes. So get your little shovels and buckets ready.
Yeah. But
now,
hey,
can I ask you a question, Cody?
Yeah.
Is Minecraft the logical conclusion of sandboxes?
The logical conclusion?
I mean, it's like literally just like a sandbox in that it's like you can pick things up and build it.
I think some games are defined. There are certain ways to define a game. I think, like, Skyrim is an RPG with some really good open world elements to it.
Sure.
But I think games like Minecraft, where the whole world is a sandbox and it's just there for you to play in, that is a true sandbox game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think games like that, I don't know. I also put a lot of time into Minecraft back when it was in its, like,
infancy or whatever.
Yeah, like right in its, like, beta and like maybe the first couple of patches outside of, like, being, like, feature complete and all that, like. But yeah, I would say Minecraft is the perfect example of just a sole sandbox game.
That's a good answer, I think. So
yeah.
Hey, so, middle section time.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, welcome to the middle section.
Yeah, this is the section.
Go ahead, Cody.
It's been a long time. This is the section where we thank you for
It's been a while.
getting this far, and to also tell you how you can get a hold of us outside of just listening to us babble about nerd shit. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, we use this platform to say silly things, do our D&D, our out of context D&D quotes, and when certain episodes are either late or, I don't know, who knows, maybe even early, due to technical difficulties or what have you, that's where we post that information. So if you're ever wondering, like, hey, what's going on? Check our Twitter. Joe runs that, and he's done some silly things. I check up on it occasionally, and it's made me chuckle. And you can follow that at fandomr_podcast. That is the Twitter handle.
Yes.
And yeah.
Now, if you want to join the conversation, you should send us an email. That's where Cody hangs out, and he's like, sits there waiting for emails, even when he's at his regular job.
No, don't say that.
I mean, whoops.
I'm working when I'm at work.
Yes, we all are.
Right, but if you want to get in this conversation, maybe you want us to go back to certain topics, you want to ask us questions about how we feel about maybe some of the things we said about history, video games, D&D. A lot of our old D&D episodes were based on questions. You can hit us up at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit us up at www.fandomroulette.com. Right at the bottom, we have a little submission form where you can ask a question and bloop, and it'll go straight to our email. Bloop. So if you want to give us ideas for season 2, the things you want to talk, or you want us to talk about, etc., you can hit me up there.
Yeah. And also, we are on iTunes and we are on SoundCloud. So please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell a friend. Get those numbers up. Listen.
Yeah, tell your friends, because we like to talk about nerdy stuff, and we want to definitely share the love of these fandoms with everybody. And I think this is good fun.
I would agree. And with that, that's the end of the middle section.
Yeah.
That's the end of the middle section. Straight into a new bit. Bum.
Yeah, but before we get into the new bit, do you... Oh,
this is the bit I was talking... Okay.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. It smells bad in here.
Man, it's terrible. Guys, this is the Garbage Kid.
What? Who is this?
Yeah, so we're still doing the Garbage Kid, folks. If you're new, this is the section where we make an NPC for your tabletop role-playing games, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or, Pathfinder, Space Finder, your own little made-up thing, whatever it is, we made it for you.
For you.
Yeah, and this week...
I just did that arm thing that they do in bad commercials.
We do it for you.
And we point at the screen together at the same time.
Yeah. And then it plays that, cool, cheesy music. I love it. Yeah.
Anyway,
so this week...
Yeah, tell me about this kid.
This guy, this person, genderless,
gender neutral,
is Spirit Edgelord.
Oh my god!
Yes,
David,
it's great that Edgelord. Yeah, no, this character was made in spirit of a good friend of ours.
Yeah, is it a tiefling?
No, unfortunately, it is a half orc.
Okay,
half orc monk.
That's pretty good. Ooh,
yeah. So, Spirit knew who their parents are.
Okay, good.
I said the wrong tense there. And was born at home.
Nice. That's a good place to be born.
Yeah. Spirit has 2 siblings and is the oldest of the Edgelord siblings.
Aww. That's so cute.
Spirit was raised by a single mother because the father abandoned the Edgelord family.
That's not cute. That's why he's such an edgelord.
Yeah, it must be why they're so edgy and go to Hot Topic all the time.
Yeah.
Spirit lived a modest lifestyle, moving around, living almost nomadically.
Oh, sorry, Spirit.
Spirit spent most of their childhood alone with no close friends.
So edgy.
Well, I mean, it had to be a little edgy.
Would have been funny if it was like everyone liked him because he was super nice and cool. Like he wasn't actually.
I would have loved it if his entire story
was actually pretty nice and sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like a shonen character. Spirit became a monk to seek instruction to gain deeper understanding of existence and their place in the world.
Whoa.
Yeah, some deep shit. Spirit's temple is high in the branches of an immense tree in the Feywild.
Damn, that's not where half-orcs are supposed to go?
Well, that's where they hang out.
That's cool.
The monastic icon of their temple is the Kirin, which is like a unicorn-ish thing.
Cool.
This monastery sees its main purpose to watch over and protect the land.
Nice.
Spirit's master was kind and generous, never critical of their progress. Nevertheless, Spirit felt that they never fully lived up to the expectations placed upon them.
Okay.
Spirit is 45 years old and had a ton of life events leading up to this very moment.
Very nice, always the best part.
Yeah. Spirit made an enemy of an adventurer, and Spirit was to blame.
Oh no, what did he do?
It's up to the viewer, the listener.
Okay.
Next, Spirit would fall in love, and then went on an adventure. However, Spirit contracted a disease while exploring a filthy warren.
Oh no.
While recovering,
was
Spirit
it a sexy
worked
disease?
In a filthy warren?
You never know.
I ain't gonna judge.
Judge not lest you be judged, Cody.
While recovering, Spirit worked for a time to earn some money. Spirit would go on another adventure and learned a great deal from it.
Okay.
Spirit would then lose a dear friend due to a misunderstanding.
Oh, jeez.
Finally, Spirit would be given a weapon from a family member as a gift. And that, my dudes and dudettes, is Spirit Edgelord.
Excellent. So yeah, if you include Spirit in your story or you write any fan fiction about
please send it in.
I will read it
more.
Verbatim.
Yes.
Unless you throw in like all kinds of like fascist propaganda or whatever, then I won't. But I will read it. The grosser the better as far as I'm concerned.
Oh man, I can't wait till our first one comes in.
Oh man, it might be a full episode. It might be. Yeah, with all the color commentary I'm going to add to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah, so moving on to a similar topic.
We're going to
Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, wait, that might actually get us in trouble. We're moving right along to so hey Cody,
what's up?
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
How long has it been since you have played in a world that was written by actually Wizards of the Coast?
Wow. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I've... No offense to that. I don't think I've ever played in one.
I thought that you played in
you're right.
Previs one or whatever.
I did one. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head.
Okay.
If I remember, I will blurt it out and no one will know what I'm talking about.
Sure. So, the only reason I asked this question is, Wizards of the Coast is a great company. They have lots of really cool books. And one of the really nice things about Wizards of the Coast is that they also have kind of like really nice little pre-made adventures in pre-made worlds for you to run a D&D campaign in.
Yeah.
They have their own fun little cool things and gimmicks. I guess technically Sunless Citadel is a made by them world, ain't it?
Oh yeah, you're right. I just put it in. Okay, yeah. So I have run a little bit of a module myself. Actually, I have run Sunless Citadel a couple of times.
But anyways,
you know what? I think Sunless Citadel was what I was playing in. So I don't know what actual setting that's in, like canonically.
Sure.
But I have played through the Sunless Citadel.
But for a lot of us, in fact, I would say most of us, the odds of us actually playing in a fully realized, created by Wizards of the Coast world is pretty rare.
It depends on your age. I think older, like veterans, people who are probably older than us and who have been playing in the space for a really long time.
Sure.
Have probably seen a lot of like Wizards of the Coast stuff and play in that space a lot.
Okay.
But I think as D&D becomes easier to kind of play around in, and like the rules aren't so, rigid as they once were, I feel that it's easier now more than ever, especially with the amount of like for a really long time, Dungeons and Dragons was kind of the king of role-playing games.
Yes.
But now it's like, sure, Dungeons and Dragons is pretty popular and probably is still pretty high up there on the charts, if there is a chart. I'm pretty sure there is.
Sure there's a chart.
But then there's all of these other really cool games too. So, I think now more than ever, playing in like a homebrewed, universe is a lot more common than it used to be.
Sure.
At least from what I understand.
So we're going to spend the next few weeks talking about different aspects of world building. And I know we've done this just a little bit. Well, we've done this a little bit before. But we're actually going to be doing like deep dives into different ideas and topics of world building.
Yes.
So I think that as we were talking about this, we had kind of bandied about some ideas. But I think that one that we kind of tossed out to maybe be a later episode, Cody rightfully suggested that it's probably really important to make it one of the earliest episodes, because so much of this rests on what is really going to be a good campaign, which is campaign sort of theme, or I guess another way to say it would be like, what kind of fantasy are you building for your characters?
Yeah.
So basically what that means is, if you were to look at The Lord of the Rings, that is a very special type of fantasy, which is pretty much heroic fantasy.
Sure. Okay.
But as the years have gone on, there have become other really cool, unique, and interesting types of fantasy as we've moved along, including science fiction and science fantasy. We'll throw those into the mix as well. But a couple off the top of my head, Conan is kind of like a sword and sorcery fantasy.
Okay.
Maybe people disagree with me on that. We have examples of dark fantasy.
Yes.
We have, political intrigue fantasy. So I think the most pertinent example of that, contemporary speaking, is Game of Thrones.
Yep.
Other ones include like, basic just like war stories where you're just kind of like following, fantasy soldiers in a fantasy realm. Although that has become a really popular, I would say, sci-fi genre more than a fantasy genre, because you have the whole Space Marines thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And then other ones, you have mystery, which like everyone knows what a mystery is.
Yeah.
You have swashbuckling, which is like your Count of Monte Cristo or your like Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
You have epic fantasy, which like honestly, I feel like the distinction between heroic and epic fantasy is like
there's a bit of gray in there. Like there's a little bit of things that overlap. But,
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's true for all things.
Sure.
But as we've talked about, I think, many times on this podcast, in fact, it might be a phrase we say so frequently that you might be saying like, all right, we get it, is really try to build your theme or your tone to your players.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the game we're playing in right now, The Six, would probably be somewhere between epic and heroic fantasy.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
When I first started, I was just looking for some good classic heroic fun. I wanted you guys to be heroes. The world isn't so grim, dark like you would in, your darker fantasies, or like it's not quite as violent and cutthroat as something like, sword and sorcery. It tends to bend. I think it leans more on heroic fantasy than epic, although, I don't know. I haven't really given it a whole lot of thought in terms of like trying to label it. I've just been kind of doing like my tone for our campaign, or for the campaign that you guys are in, is I wanted you guys to be heroes, and so I wanted to take you through a heroic quest that took you to the far reaches of the world to do crazy things and, get into shenanigans along the way. I think the tone's always kind of been more lighter. I wouldn't necessarily call it a serious campaign by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you guys did build a pillow fort room during one of our sessions.
It was great.
But it's been heroic. You guys have fought lots of like crazy monsters and in crazy encounters, and you've lived through all of them, surprising to me.
Surprising everyone, I would think.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think it was because for a few of us, it was our first campaign.
Yep. I think three of the six,
maybe four,
maybe even
six.
four. Yeah, maybe even four were very new to Dungeons and Dragons. I think 3 people were new to just role-playing games in general.
Mm-hmm.
Don't quote me on that. But
then there were Joel and I, the big nerds at the table.
The nerds! But yeah, and I've also worked on, I've finished, and I'm sticking to my current evolution of that setting.
Sure. And
the theme kind of falls into it's a little nebulous.
Sure,
I
obviously.
wanted to, and that's the great thing about building a theme. It can be a little nebulous. It doesn't have to be so like this has to be a dark fantasy and that's it. Mm-hmm. Like that's all we can do. It can be a mix. Like for instance, I would say D&D's Eberron is kind of like a high magic fantasy that kind of dips its toes into political intrigue where everyone's got secrets, but it also is this epic fantasy, having spell fights on the top of locomotives going across the across the plains and all this cool stuff. Like, you don't have to pick a theme. I don't want we'll talk about themes and like things that you can mix and match into your game.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to stay away from, or just encourage, like, you don't have to stick to a theme, but having a theme in mind makes building things easier. So if you happen to want a more gritty, realistic setting, like that's a thing you should be thinking about when building everything else.
Yeah, in fact, I was actually going to say, I had a little bit of a gripe with the book, trying to suggest that, like, intrigue, mystery, and war were, like, standalone genres or themes.
I mean, you can do campaigns where most of it is one of the 3, but I think a more interesting campaign is something where all 3 are taking place simultaneously. Exactly. Like, why can't you have political espionage during a war that you're fighting in with a mystery afoot?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I think as a world building exercise, considering your theme or themes, or just, maybe keeping an idea like what types of things you want to happen in your campaign, like,
for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then so keeping up with the themes, or keeping up with the season type that we're doing, Joe and I have decided to build or homebrew our own little world that we'll talk about.
Yes.
As we move forward. And so I kind of picked my theme already.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with a little bit of a darker fantasy, something that's a little more grim. I've done a lot of heroic, happy-go-lucky adventures, things like that. But for this little experiment that we're doing, I'm doing a darker fantasy, something a little more gritty, where monsters aren't just this like, oh, it's a nuisance, like it's a very big problem, and people are ruthless, but I also might sprinkle in little bits of mystery and intrigue in there, as I do feel that those three themes or genres like mixed together make for a very interesting campaign.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And then because this is my first time really delving into something like this, I'm going to be going a little bit more straight heroic fantasy.
Very cool.
But I'm going to also add some intrigue and things like that. Like I'm planning on making factions and how the factions are going to interact with one another. I actually just finished building a mini pantheon today when I was during the day. So
very cool. Yeah, and then
I'm excited to talk about them.
I'm excited to dive deeper into this, because this has really been this week. I haven't really done a whole lot to like do the next steps, but I'm gonna buckle down during this week, because next week, little teaser, we're gonna build a town.
Hooray! And in my opinion, a town's a really nice little starting point.
Yeah.
Or
I think there are two schools of thought when it comes to building, kind of world building, especially for role-playing games. There's like kind of starting small and branching out, which I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but you get the idea. Sure. And then there's the reverse, coming up with the big kind of cosmology or the big ideas of this universe and working down to that first town that your would-be adventurers are going to get into.
Sure. I think that makes sense to me. And then, is that it, or we gonna...
I mean,
I was going to be brief about this section, so...
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, one last thing I wanted to talk about briefly for our grab bag section. As I was getting ready for this this adventure and things like that, and I am, like I've mentioned before, I am building my own like kind of small campaign to play with some first time role players, which is scary for all kinds of reasons. I'm rereading one of my favorite books at the moment, which is a really excellent fantasy book that I highly recommend to everyone listening to this podcast if you haven't already listened to it, which is called The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch.
I've heard of this, and I definitely want to read it.
It's amazing. I will let you borrow my copy because I'm like almost done with it.
Hell yeah!
And so basically, there's a few things about it that I absolutely adore, which is I enjoy the fact that it is sort of a fantasy Renaissance world.
Okay.
So like instead of people walking around in like plate mail with like broadswords and battle axes, like people have like the upper class has like rapiers. But like they're wearing like doublets and things like that. And there's like a really advanced like economic system with like counting houses and money lenders and things like that. It feels very much like an Italian city-state during the Renaissance. So think Assassin's Creed 2, if you will.
Cool.
And then it focuses on this band of thieves who call themselves the Gentlemen Bastards, who are part of the Komori underworld, which is a bunch of individual gangs that are all kind of nebulously held together by this thing called the Secret Peace, which is basically this peace that the leader of the underworld developed with the leader of the city, which is basically like, we will rob from like small level merchants, we'll rob from sailors and things like that, but we'll never rob from nobles. So
interesting, kind of the reverse Robin Hood scenario.
Yeah, pretty much. So basically it's like, hey, like your guards won't mess with us, we won't mess with you, kind of deal.
Okay, cool.
But this band of the Gentlemen Bastards are con artists who basically exclusively run scams on upper class nobility, while at the same time pretending that they're just like a simple little band of like purse snatchers and like second story people, which is basically like breaking into houses and stealing little things. So they're putting on a public face for the gangs while at the same time running elaborate con artist things. And it's just one of the best books I've ever read. It's very fully realized. You get a sense of every part of the city, every smell, every sound, you get this whole world built, and it's been very inspiring as I've read this. I'm not saying I'm stealing things lock, stock, and barrel from it. Ooh, that was a not intended pun. But yeah, I think it's really effective to learning how to build a city and how to make a city feel big and broad, and in many ways it succeeds in what Dragon Age 2 was trying to do, in that it's like you really understand that town. Like, there are points where you feel like you could, if you got plopped down to the middle of the city, you could find your way around.
Cool. I like it.
I would say, like I said, it's probably one of my favorite books I've ever read ever. It has become my new gold standard for fantasy, so I kind of compare everything that I read against that. It's highly worth a read. I would highly recommend it. And yeah, that's my little pitch for the Lies of Locke Lamora. But I think that overall, this is to say, and I'm going to keep this brief as well. There's no real, I would say that as I'm thinking about this, part of me is worried that it's like, but what if it's not original? And it's like, well, you know what? If you take an idea, but you give it your own flavor, you can make it feel original. And I highly doubt that everyone in my campaign has read this book, or even if they have, I think it's exciting for them to try to live out these pretty fantastical things that are happening. So I think it's always important to take cues from things that but make sure to make them your own. That makes it more fun for everyone in general.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely something with this whole world building thing, definitely use the things that are already around to give you an idea of how you want things to play. I am looking at, some, and there's, I say this loosely. I'm reading some, Cthulhu-esque stuff to kind of get an idea of what I want to do, although I don't. The Lovecraftian stuff was written at a different time.
Different time, for sure.
He is definitely, spoiler alert, he is a racist.
Yep.
And that was one of the big things in my most recent campaign, or campaign world, I guess, is that I didn't want to play in the race space.
Sure.
I wanted things to be very cosmopolitan, people aren't, that's not a thing that I want to explore. I think that's overdone in fantasy stuff. So, but yeah, definitely take from things that you're looking at, in terms of themes. If you want intrigue and backstabbing and all that crazy stuff, watch Game of Thrones, yeah. Right? Such a good example of how to do that and how to do it well. And if you're looking for, like you said, intrigue and kind of these high fantastical, that's a word, spaces, the book that you just got done talking about, and I know the name, but I'm missing a part of it somewhere, so I'm going to screw it up.
Sure.
But, take what you know and definitely use them to, jumpstart your creative juices.
Exactly. I agree with that wholeheartly. So
yeah, and don't feel bad for taking an idea that's already made. God, who was the guy or the person who quoted there's nothing original anymore, it's just a repeat of something that's already been done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, when it comes down to it, every story falls into one of 5 archetypes. So I'm not actually a monomyth theorist, but anyway. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to this new episode 1 of Season 1.
Season 1.
It's episode 1, Season 1.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Please go back to the middle section to find out our information.
Please tell people about our show, and we hope you enjoyed it, because we're definitely working to make sure that it is enjoyable and easy to digest for everybody.
100%. But yeah, so thank you so much for listening to Fandom Roulette. And signing off, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.